Go ahead.
All right, welcome to the Board of Health meeting for Monday, January 8th at 6 p.m. Member Chris Mills is absent tonight, as is Director Kennedy. And first on the agenda tonight, we have the Planning Board presentation of the state statute passed in 2020 requiring MBTS communities to adopt by right multifamily zoning.
Okay, my name's Stephanie Danielson. I'm the planning director for the town of Easton, and I work with the planning board on zoning, and I'm working with them on this initiative. Thank you so much for having me this evening to talk about this. I did notice there was a typo on the agenda. It's MBTA zoning.
Yep.
So just want to make that clear. We'll talk about that. And I don't know if you want to maybe move to better see the, I don't know if that screen rotates at all.
It swivel? Yeah, see if we can get a little swivel on that too.
Might swivel.
There. And then,
Can you see it?
Yeah, okay.
You sure?
Okay.
And then I think I can just sit here. Sorry.
That's all
I
right.
came in early, so I wouldn't have.
there's one to the left there, outlet.
All right, we'll just run it like this. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is what is the MBTA community's multifamily by right zoning law, what it means to Easton, why Easton is going to comply, and then I'm going to talk about the steps that we've already taken towards compliance. I'll talk a little bit about the timeline that we need to come into compliance with the zoning and opportunities where we're going to have meetings and members of the public can participate in those meetings. And then I will answer questions along the way if I feel like we're getting bogged down, or if I'm coming up to chronologically a point where it makes sense to just move forward. I'll just mention that and then address the question at that point. But if there are any questions at the end, I'm more than happy to answer them. So the MBTA Communities Law was put into, it was adopted by legislation and enacted in 2021 as part of the Economic Development Bill. And the impetus for this, it requires that MBTA communities, and I'll explain in a minute how Easton is an MBTA community, but it requires that MBTA communities have at least one zoning district in their community that allows multifamily zoning by right. Most communities across Massachusetts, across the country, either don't allow for multifamily zoning or have zoning that effectively zones against it. In Easton, if you look at what we allow for multifamily zoning, it is very uneconomical for someone to try to develop multifamily housing. You'd have to have 60,000 square feet of land, and on that 60,000 square feet, you could have a maximum of 3 bedrooms, 3 dwelling units. So you'd either have 3 single bedroom units or a mix of 2 and 1. You could add up to 20,000 square feet, you could add additional units, but the maximum number of units you could have is 10. So it effectively zones against it. And part of the reason, I mean, the real driver for the state putting this legislation into law was that Easton is in a bit of a housing crisis, but the state's in a housing crisis. There just isn't sufficient housing, not only for the people who live here and want to stay here, people who go to school here and then would like to stay and work in Massachusetts are finding it very expensive to do so. So we're losing people as a result of that. We're losing a lot of young people as a result. We can't attract new residents to the state. And in turn, we're having difficulty attracting some businesses. And it makes it difficult for businesses to stay here if they're looking to grow. And, you know, I was at an award ceremony where the governor spoke, and she talked a lot. And she talked a lot about big employer businesses. Easton doesn't have a lot of big employer businesses. I mean, Stonehill certainly is because it's a school. But even our smaller businesses are having a hard time finding help that can afford to live in Easton and even close to Easton. So the zoning requirement, as I said, it's that you have a zoning district that allows multifamily by right. And what that means, if you're not familiar with zoning, is that a project can't be denied because it's for multifamily housing. The planning board can hold site plan review, but they really are limited in what they can oversee. They have to, it's limited to looking at sufficient parking, sufficient circulation of traffic, making sure that there's really no adverse impact on the area as a result of traffic coming out of there, and some architectural oversight. But they can't deny the project. So they'd have to work with the board, with the developer, on any of those items to make sure that the project could move forward. It applies to the 177 cities and towns around pretty much the Boston area. And there are, like I said, 177 MBTA communities in Massachusetts. You see the ones in the dark blue and the dark green primarily have transit stations. Many of the communities, like Easton, which is right here, is an adjacent community. So Mansfield has a transit station, Brockton, Stoughton, but Easton does not. But as an act of legislation, we are an MBTA community, and that was decided a while ago. The basic requirements, in addition to allowing multifamily as of right, the minimum permissible number of units that can be built needs to be no less than 15 units per acre. There can be no restrictions or limits on the age of occupants, so the zoning needs to be family friendly. It can't zone against families. It can't restrict occupants by age. It can't restrict the number or size of units or the number of bedrooms. Now, in this slide we have it that it has to be located within a half-mile of a transit station, as I was explaining a little bit before the meeting started. Being an adjacent community, Easton doesn't have an MBTA transit station within its bounds, and it's not within, there's no transit station within a half mile of any of the town's boundaries. So in that case, the zoning should be located in an area that is closer to, has more access to commercial uses, potential for work opportunities, services, and mixed housing.
And would these be HUD housing buildings?
No.
No, okay.
No. And well, so let me finish this and then I'll kind of jump a little bit on that one. The district has to be at least 50 acres in size. It can be sub-districts, so you could have multiple sub-districts that comprise the 50 acres. However, at least one of those districts has to be 25 contiguous acres, and none of the sub-districts can be less than 5 contiguous acres. And the HUD question is a good one, only because it makes people think, oh my goodness, Easton's going to have to build the 15 units per acre in any one of these districts. The law doesn't require, it certainly doesn't require that the town build it. That we're not in the building business. That's not what we do. We work with developers. We adopt zoning that encourages the type of uses the town wants to see in the community, but we don't build. And it doesn't force any developer to build. It just gives them the opportunity, if they feel this is an economic option for them, and there's a need in the town, that they could build this by right without going through several years of permitting, potential denial. So I just said, the law does not require that it be built. It doesn't require a community to build the infrastructure that may be needed. The Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities has said repeatedly that developers will figure it out. They generally do. So there are lots of places in Easton that don't have sewer. We're not proposing the districts be located necessarily. There's only one district that's being proposed that doesn't or wouldn't have access to sewer. But the law doesn't require that the towns build out that infrastructure. The law also does not provide options for waivers or exemptions. And I think I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Because the real question is, okay, so the state is requiring this. And what is the motivation for communities to adopt the zoning? Right now what the state is saying is that communities that need to comply with the zoning, that don't adopt it within the time frame that they need to, they will no longer be eligible for certain state-funded funding programs that exist for infrastructure, for planning, those type of activities. Similar, I don't know if you've heard about the MassWorks grants. There's a Housing Choice Capital Grant, the Complete Streets program. Easton has really benefited from several of those programs over the last 10 years, and I have a list here of several of the grant awards that we received that really helped Easton build infrastructure, do sidewalk improvements, roadway improvements, that helps really spark several of our economic growth areas, including Main Street and the Furnace Village District area. The sidewalks that were recently built along Lincoln Street.
I will set it for you.
Along Lincoln Street were funded through the Complete Streets program. So the Complete Streets program, I think we'd still be eligible for, but we would be given a lower preference. If you're an MBTA community and you're not in compliance, they're going to knock you down a few points. And if there are other communities that are competing for those funds, it's going to make it more difficult for us.
Do you have a ballpark of how much money we'd be losing annually if they didn't comply? We didn't comply.
I'll use this year. So these projects total around $8 million that we've received funding for. That, and again, that's over basically a little more than a 10-year period of time. This year we applied for 4 grants, and we received funding. Awards for all of them in the amounts that we asked for. So we're receiving $400,000 in grants.
I mean, if you average it out, it's 800,000-ish over the 11 years, so 50-ish.
8 million.
8 million, yeah. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. 8 million.
I put the comma in the wrong place. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of money, and it's really. So the Furnace Village District, when the betterments were going to be around, anywhere between $25,000 and $32,000 a betterment unit, we were looking at ways to help reduce that cost. One was certainly the DIF district that was passed, but the other was we got a $1.5 million grant through the MassWorks project for that. And we also had received a $250,000 grant towards the design of the sewer project. One of our grant awards this year was $250,000 for the design for the pump station that will allow us to add additional capacity to that sewer system. And that benefits the town in many ways. I mean, one, it allows us to take on new users and new businesses, but the more users you have, the more efficient the system works, and it also helps build up that enterprise fund for the ongoing maintenance of the system.
And other than being sort of given less priority for noncompliance, are there additional penalties or fines involved with noncompliance?
At this time, there are not.
Okay.
The Attorney General did issue an advisory that towns need to comply. Whether the town would be sued or not by an entity that felt they were aggrieved because the town had not adopted it. That is yet to be seen. But so, just really quickly, we're an adjacent community. We need to adopt this zoning by the end of year 2024. We're planning to go to town meeting in May with the zoning. And I'll be up front, I'll say it again at the end. Peter I think would say it when he's here. I would expect him to, but we're looking for your support in passing this and giving feedback on the zoning districts and what your concerns or questions might be. Okay, so we talked about what the district was. Another point that I need to mention is they have a minimum capacity. The zoning district as a whole needs to be able to permit, and that is 10%. We're an adjacent community, so for us it's 10% of Easton's permanent housing stock as of the 2020 census. And that number was 9,128 units, so we rounded up to 9,130. And that means that our district has to be able to, that 913 units within the district would be permissible. Again,
you have to zone it to allow 913.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that.
Exactly. And thank you for saying that. I have to say that over and over again, but it's good to know that people understand that. We talked about the fact that they could, the planning board can require some level of site plan review. And then again, we talked about this. And as I'm working through this, I have extra slides that I keep taking out because we don't really need to go over that. Some of the other reasons to comply that really are compelling. It really helps Easton achieve its housing goals to meet the needs of the community. I've quoted or cited some of the plans that talk about housing here. The Affordable Housing Trust Action Plan that was updated last year talks about increasing the availability of affordable housing options for families and older residents, especially those who are looking to stay in place. They want to age here, they've lived here, they've spent their lives here. And a lot of, I did a presentation for the Age-Friendly Community Committee, and a lot of those folks are really facing this dilemma where they have homes, they're going to be able to sell them. The housing costs in Easton have really skyrocketed, so that will help them. They'll, make a good return on that investment, but then trying to find a home or a place to live after that is getting more and more expensive, and that's a concern that people are facing.
So are all units that are going to be built, theoretically, are they all affordable? They're required to be affordable?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. That's one of the things I forgot to mention. The state doesn't require that you require that they be affordable units. Easton is proposing that 10% of the units minimum be affordable. The state's saying you can't require more than that unless you can demonstrate through a fiscal analysis that it would be economic for a developer to build more than the 10%. We did contract with a qualified firm to do that fiscal analysis for us, and they came back, and they've been doing them for several other communities, and they have found that our district and what we're proposing, it just would not be economic. So we will require 10%. And a big part of the reason for that, one, again, is the affordability factor. And when we talk about that, we're talking about affordability at 80% of the the annual median income in the area, which I have the number, but it's around $96,000. It's really for a family of 4.
So will the town be able to double dip on their affordable housing number and this number if it's still 10%? Or are they segregated?
Are you talking about on the SHI?
Yeah.
These units would count towards the SHI.
Excellent.
Yeah, and that's in our zoning.
Okay.
That's what, I mean, we don't have to do that, but you
We're
jumped
currently
a little bit
under,
ahead of
though,
me.
right?
We're just under.
Okay.
Easton is just under. Easton's worked really.
We were there, but then with
we're
the
there
census.
Yep.
So
And
you guys know what you're talking about?
Yep.
Okay.
so, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but you brought it up. I mean, Easton's worked very hard to get to the 10%. I think a lot of it was probably driven by the fact that you get to the 10%, then you have more control over 40B projects that you might not like where they're being proposed or what's being proposed. And I think that may have been initially a driving factor, but I think that Easton really recognized that housing was becoming much less affordable for people. Working class, your young professionals, teachers, people who live in town. I've been told that recently, I don't know if it was both fire and police, needed to increase the distance from which, the radius from which someone could live from Easton in one of those important emergency, you've got to be here quickly to respond to any kind of emergency, because they can't afford to live here when you're just starting out in a profession.
Does it have to be vacant land, or can land that's already in use as multifamily be rezoned?
It does not have to be vacant land, and you don't have to rezone your district. So it can be, they talk about it being an overlay district, and that's what we're proposing, that the underlying zoning that exists would continue to persist, and if a developer came in and wanted to develop land or redevelop land under that zoning, they could. They could also, if they wanted to, take advantage of the multifamily by right zoning. Just quickly, I think this is a good discussion. There's a demand for multifamily housing in Easton. The project, development that has occurred over the last 10 years, when you look at Avalon, you look at Shovel Works, and I think it's 40 units maybe on Washington Street, they are all at occupancy. So we'll talk about the districts in a minute. I just want to talk about the steps taken to date. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. The guidelines for this zoning were issued by what was then the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. At that time, they required that communities hold a briefing with their governing body, it's the Select Board in Easton, to educate people on what it was and what the requirements were. At that time, when we did the presentation to the Select Board, they decided to appoint our volunteer representative implementation team. It was comprised of members of various boards, and their charge was to review the guidelines, provide comments, because these were drafts, and then to discuss what potential locations might make sense for this type of district. And that's what we did. Everybody looked at where do we already have this type of housing, and would those be good areas to locate it. which were primarily around our target growth areas, and this type of development has been what's been contemplated. Our zoning had already been changed to allow multifamily and mixed use in some of those areas. They wrapped up their work, they provided draft comments and a report to the select board. And one of the things that they also did is they developed guiding principles and guidelines for establishing the district. And now we're in the process of, we've drafted the zoning and we're going out and we're talking to people about it and explaining it. So this district, there were we started off the implementation team with 8 different areas that were being proposed. And some of them you would recognize and kind of understand. One was centered around the shovel works project. Multifamily, pretty much to the density level that's being required. That was ruled out because it has a historic preservation and it's the local historic district, and there was a level of review and permitting that would be necessary that would make it non-compliant. The 40R district around Queeset Commons was another one. But this area here, the Foundry Eastman Street area we're talking about, this is where Avalon currently exists. This is your Target, your Big Y. This is an industrial site. It's not heavy industry. It's being used primarily as a warehouse, or I think they're actually disassembling mattresses there now. And you have a little mixed use, meaning there's commercial and office space. There's a retail and office space in this building here. 3 lots here that are vacant. This would be, these vacant lots would certainly be suitable for redevelopment. And then and the location makes a lot of sense. One, you already have that type of development here. You have residential development. And it seems to have sparked more interest in the commercial businesses here. We have a new Starbucks that's gone up. It's always busy now when I go there. The Target seems busier than when I first started working for the town. So this seemed to make a lot of sense as one of the districts. And this is more than 50 acres in total, and it could meet both the total area requirement by itself and also the number of units required, because it could accommodate up to 1,000 units in total. This area is along Washington Street and Belmont Street. It's the southeast corner of that intersection. This is the marketplace. You have some existing apartments over here, Belmont Arms. Mm-hmm. There's some property that was recent. We know someone who owned property bought a couple of more parcels and would like to redevelop them as multifamily. So there's some interest there. And this seemed to be in another good location. This is in the Queeset Commercial District. Again, a portion of this is already zoned for multifamily, one of the sub-districts within this district. And
it's on sewer too.
It's on sewer.
Is that whole is that whole area on sewer? Because I know part of it's not, and it is a zone 2.
No,
so
but I have talked with Greg Swan, and the sewer line could be extended.
Excellent.
There's plenty of capacity, and again, if Easton adopts the zoning, we'll be eligible for more infrastructure projects that would probably help. And if that were to be redeveloped, this has.
What size is that? Is that 50 acres or no?
No.
Okay.
Is that industrial park?
That is so. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Because it's not big for me, I'm assuming it's not big enough for you. There we go. Let me go back. So this is IBC. They would love to stay in Easton. They manufacture parts for HVAC systems, like the ventilation pieces.
Ductwork.
The ductwork, sorry. The ductwork, and they would love to stay in Easton. They feel they could grow. At least I have been talking with the operations manager there for a number of years. We haven't had conversations recently, but they're on septic. And it's, in this instance, it's not what they're producing in their water use that's preventing them. Some of the industrial park, there are businesses that need a higher level of treatment than the septic system. So we're actually losing some businesses as a result of that. The available land for them to expand the building is where their septic system is. So they would love to go on Brock. That you have the industrial park to the east, which does employ a lot of people. There are businesses, there's offices, there's manufacturing. I think people don't realize that there are several manufacturing operations because it's quiet, it's clean, it's not what we used to think of. You know, my father worked in a shoe factory when I was a kid, right in the center of town, and you knew that was there. But, you know, so there's opportunity to live close to work. There's opportunities for, you know, businesses to do your shopping, to eat. Services are fairly close by. The BAT bus does run into the industrial park. So, you know, there's opportunities there. And the site where the marketplace is really underutilized.
Big time.
Yeah. That's a large lot, that's not.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yes.
Be a beautiful brewery.
Yeah, we had some nice rendering. Well, it is I've been told it's a very well constructed building, but it's just not a very useful building.
It's not tied into sewer yet, and they could, and then they could have many buildings on it.
Right, you could. We had some renderings. We did a study on that property several years ago and showed what could potentially go there, especially. And that was before the sewer.
Right.
So, and then the third area is up by Roach Brothers. This is, if the MBTA, you can see this is the train line right here. That's the MBTA right of way, the old rail bed.
I can't see your cursor on that.
Oh yeah, someone told me that.
Yeah,
you know what? That's true, and I forgot.
I know where the train line is, but for the people.
Okay, well that's where the train is.
Yeah.
Sorry. Everyone's
So that's a little strip.
It's right
is
here.
the train.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll get a pointer for
The rest of us were just
my
being
next
polite.
meeting. Yeah, exactly. Hey, the Council on Aging, they told me, they said, we can't see that.
Need the laser pointer.
And I forgot. But over here on the right, already there's condominiums, so multifamily there. And the multifamily doesn't have to be apartments. It can be condominiums. It could technically be smaller homes. It just needs
Like
to...
the neighborhood right there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
all smaller, 900
Yeah,
to
but-
1,300 square
I
foot
mean,
ranches
it
on
doesn't
the
say
road.
it has to be, you have to have, it has to be 15 units per acre, is what it has to be. Which could be really tight with smaller homes, but as long as you have all the services that you need, like utilities and sewer and water. And this, again, is kind of a center. It's where one of the train stations was proposed for the South Coast Rail. So at some point, if it ever did move forward, the South Coast Rail ever did move forward, this would be an area either to keep in our back pocket or to have already in hand as part of the district.
Isn't one of the water wells?
That's a standpipe. All it does is create pressure. There's no well there.
Okay.
Yep,
Yep.
and there is, you're right,
Okay.
there is a standpipe.
It's my old neighborhood, I know.
Okay. So let's see. those are the districts, and that's primarily what people are concerned about and care about, is what do the districts look like, what are the areas that are being considered. And this is just a matrix, and this is all available on our webpage.
So it would be one of those districts or a combination?
The board hasn't fully decided. I think
Okay.
there are members that would be fine with all three.
Okay.
And I think there are at least one or two members that would rather it was just one. I think that there's a lot of interest in the Foundry Eastman Street because it really meets all the criteria for a good location. In addition, it has the most services, it has the most business already going on there. It's in a close proximity because we don't have a train station, but Mansfield's just down the road. Right now,
It's got the sewage.
it has the sewer, yep, and the sewer is there. You don't have to expand it; it's already there, and it's close to. It is close to open space. Old Pond and New Pond conservation land are right there. Foundry Street doesn't have a sidewalk, but that's a project that is in the design phase right now. It's about 8 to 10 years out, but we fully expect that within that time frame that Foundry
That would come
Street
from Five Corners all the way up?
from Five Corners all the way up, and it would connect the two areas. And then there'll be even more opportunity. I mean, just the fact that you could walk, you could go to other business districts, and then.
So what would be the disadvantage of zoning all three? Just the potential for significantly more multifamily housing?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I tell you, the second site you showed me, that would excite me a lot, being able to take that sewer line down and get more use out of that area, because that seems like a good area too.
Yes,
On which one?
on Belmont Street.
The
Washington,
Belmont Street,
Belmont.
across from Stonehill there, between
Yeah.
them and the industrial
But it
park.
doesn't get us there on its own.
Yeah, right. Well, I'd say 1 and 2 if I had.
So it'd be two
Right.
and three, or
Yeah.
it could be just one?
Right.
Okay.
That Easton Street checks
Right.
all
Or
the boxes.
it could be all three. I mean, it really, if we start getting feedback from people, this is not. I'm going to be honest. Not everybody is going to want to vote for this. People are very concerned about multifamily housing. I've heard that it's going to change the small town character of Easton. It's going to lower the values of people's homes.
The impact on the schools.
It'll have an impact on the schools. All of those are demonstrably not true. Where they're being proposed are in the target growth areas, which have always been talked about as the areas that could absorb more development and more growth. This would add a little more, if it's developed, it would add a little more multifamily housing than people would expect. But we're not proposing it in the center of town, in the center of these small neighborhoods, traditional neighborhoods that already exist. That's not what's being proposed. Housing values in Easton. Last year, Zillow issued a report that showed that Easton's home values actually, that all surrounding towns were going up. Easton's had gone up the highest. I have a chart that I just ran from Zillow the other day, and it shows Easton is second to Sharon, but house prices are going up. They have not dropped, and they haven't dropped in the time that the multifamily housing that has been built. So you can see that. School
When was that
enrollment.
report issued though? Last year?
I just ran those numbers. I'm going to pull up.
Because by state, I think we're
Okay.
going down, correct? Maybe, hopefully not easy.
Our value.
Yeah.
I think the Zillow report did show we're not increasing as fast as. So let me get the. Where's my slide? There we go. Okay. That's the school age. I'll come back to that. Okay. I was doing something with these slides. I don't have it, but it'll be on the website.
So if During town meeting, if this gets turned down, does that mean it's off the table and then we lose those state funding or grant?
Well, we will
Potential.
We will potentially. We will no. If the town doesn't adopt the zoning by the end of the year, we will not be eligible for those programs that I just showed you. Those are the programs that are covered by this zoning. If it doesn't pass at May town meeting, we will try again for fall town meeting.
Okay.
But these are the enrollment numbers. You can see from this chart that Easton enrollment peaked in 2009. It's been fairly steady since. And then the chart to the right shows the number of school-age children that have actually who live in multifamily housing and are enrolled in the public school system. And not all those children. So you can see there are 103 who are new to the system, and there are 28 of those students. The total number who actually lived in Easton prior to moving into one of these housing complexes. Questions?
So even though it's mandated by the state for these 177 communities, Easton still has to adopt it?
It's a law.
But I think what Tim is asking is, why can't the state just say,
You
here's
have
your
to do it.
zoning, here's
Right.
your zoning? Because our zoning is home rule. So
Okay.
the town has to adopt it. Plus, I don't think the state doesn't want to come out. Some of the pushback they received when they first announced the draft guidelines was, this is cookie cutter, and you've just told everyone how to do this without considering the uniqueness or different characteristics of each community. Now, what Housing and Livable Communities will tell you, which is the state agency, is, well, actually, we did put a lot of time thinking about that and looking at maps and trying to understand the constraints community had. And this is the guideline, this is the framework where now you can go in and, like Easton, you can fit this to where you feel it will work for your community and you want it to work.
Instead of the state coming down
Instead of
going,
the
it's
state.
here.
It's right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and the difference is where you have a transit station, but the reasoning there is, one, we're not telling you you have to build. We're not telling you that it has to be redeveloped. You don't have to redevelop what's already there, but it makes sense to locate new housing. If someone wants to build multifamily housing, it makes sense to locate it near these transit stations.
An eminent domain couldn't take over any of those houses because of this zoning change, could it? No.
I don't think you could just go in. If the housing or the businesses are functioning and operating and
Paying
thriving,
the taxes.
you'd have a hard time making
That argument.
that argument. Yeah.
Well, thank you. This
So
is
when does
very
the board-
informative. This is-
Pick a zone.
February.
February.
So
Or multiple
So I was
zones.
gonna say one or more.
because I have
Right.
the critical dates here.
I think it's painfully obvious what you saw there, though, the way it's gonna go,
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah.
You know, one that checks all the boxes.
It makes sense to me. I have people
Yeah.
ask me, and I will be honest. I mean, it's not my decision. I don't live in Easton. I can't vote for it. But I think that the Foundry Eastman Street really is the prime opportunity. And again, I think there's real opportunity with Belmont Washington Street.
Mm.
So March 12th
Okay.
is the last date for. So they'll take their final they're going to review and they should finalize the districts in about a month on February 12th. And then there'll be final public comment on that. And then they'll deliberate in March. And again, we're hoping for your support. And if you have questions, direct people. If you hear people talking about it and they have questions, we have a web page. If you go to the planning board website, there's a link right on the page. It's right here, easton.ma.us/MBTA zoning. And you can send people to me, and I will answer their questions, as will the chair of the planning board.
Is that website address on the town
Yes.
webpage?
Yes.
All right, so
Yes.
right on the webpage, that's all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's we have in the slider on the front page of the website,
Okay.
the town's website. There's a link as well.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
All right. Great. Thank you. Under an
Thank you so
hour.
You came in under
Under
the
an
plan.
hour.
Wonderful.
You were a great
I
audience.
think you were influenced. Just
I think it was really good interaction, because it makes it easier when people engage in the discussion. Not that this was, but if it's because then you know and you know what you want to hear. Right. All right.
Yeah, your coffee
Got it.
smelling really
No,
good.
no,
Next
no.
I would have brought you one.
No,
Okay.
it just smells good. I love the smell.
Well, I'll take it down for you again.
Great.
I'll bring it down to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good seeing you.
You too.
All right, so continuing on with the agenda, there are no betterments for this evening.
No, not this month.
And then acceptance of minutes from our meeting on December 11th, 2023.
Make a motion to accept.
Second, all those in favor? Zavis, yes.
Yeah, yes.
All right, staff notes.
We're still plugging away with Full Circle and Permit Eyes.
Yep.
Getting closer to ironing out all the kinks. Pretty much made it through most of the permit renewals.
Mm-hmm.
Soils have slowed way down,
Yes.
which is good because it's giving us time to take care of the different things associated with the permitting system. I got nothing else.
Great.
Yeah.
Member notes?
Actually, we're going to be undergoing some training that's going to go over the next 5 months. There's 3 different levels to it through the Office of Regional and Local Regional Public Health. They'll be doing the inspector level. I'll be doing the leadership, but it's all about equity. So it's really kind of nice that they're putting it through at the 3 different levels. So we'll be having staff at that inspector level. I'll do the leadership level, and then some of our mental health liaisons and community liaisons over at Frothingham will be handling the middle range. So it'll give us all a nice jumping off spot.
Excellent.
Perfect. Anything on the police fire septic issue? Septic backups?
I haven't gotten anything yet,
Okay.
but this building's been fixed,
Mhm.
and they continue to be here. Last week we were without one restroom for about an hour, and then all of them went down. And they've fixed the plumbing here. But we're not hearing any complaints. I still haven't gotten to what they actually did that might have taken care of it, other than come down hard and heavy on what should not be going down the drain.
Okay. I have nothing else.
All right, excellent. Anything else? Last call? Okay, great. I'll make a motion to adjourn the Board of Health meeting for Monday, January 8th at 6:50 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor, Zeiss, yes.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That work?
Huh?